Welcome back to the Real College Life podcast. My name is Seth Smith, and we wanted to focus on summer missions today. So I've been on the Perth summer mission trip to Australia in 2023, and I'm going back again this summer as a leader.
Yeah, my name is Gerrit Brinkman. I'm a senior here at UWSP, and I've had the privilege of going to Alaska with crew and also Perth, Australia this last summer.
I'm Grace. I'm a recent grad from UWSP, and I spent the summer in Thailand with a crew ministry called Jesus Film.
My name is Hailey Owen, and I had the privilege of going on 2 summer missions. One was to Anchorage, Alaska. I went with Gerrit the same year, and then I went to North Myrtle Beach this past summer. So, yeah.
All right. So a question I just wanted to ask everybody to start out. Did your expectations for summer mission meet what actually happened on your summer mission?
I feel like it's really hard to know what to expect going into a summer mission. Like going to Alaska, I was like, all right, I'm going to this crazy beautiful place with a bunch of my friends, and I had all these expectations about how fun it would be and how we're gonna sneak out at night and go hike in the mountains because it's light out 24/7. So
Oh yeah, it's summer in Alaska.
and then it turned out that we did a lot of training and we spent a lot of time with each other, getting to know each other, and so I guess that was a little different. I thought it would be kind of a vacation, and turns out we actually do what they tell us you're gonna do.
It's what it advertises itself.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely relate to that. Going to Australia, I have no idea. It's halfway around the world. I've never been that far out of the country before. I've been to Guatemala before, but that was about it. That's the same hemisphere. This is in the middle of July, realizing, oh wait, it's winter.
Mm-hmm.
That's a weird thing to adjust to. Granted, their winters aren't that bad, but it's just I knew we're gonna do some evangelism. We're gonna be on college campuses. That was all that I knew going into it. So I was I have no expectations for what it's going to be like. I just want to go there, see what happens, meet new people. I mean, I was expecting to talk to a lot of Australians, and I didn't even end up doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I talked with more people from India, Pakistan, Southeast Asia. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say similarly to that. Traveling to a different country, you really don't have any expectations. You can't, because you really have no idea what is going to happen when you get there. So I was in Thailand over the summer, and that is a completely different language, completely different religion, completely different culture. And I just went into it expecting the unexpected. And I think that was a really helpful mindset to have.
Yeah, I think for me, going to North Myrtle Beach, I had a little bit of what I was going to expect, because one of my friends, she went on the summer mission a few years ago, so she told me all about it. And then once I got there and went through the mission, it exceeded my expectations 100%. Not to compare it to Alaska, because Alaska was amazing, but I can vouch for NMB. It's such a great summer mission, so would highly recommend.
I feel like that's a common theme, though, of what I hear from other people is this summer mission exceeded my expectations. Oh, I knew I'd get closer with my friends, but I can't believe we're basically brothers, basically sisters now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, lifelong friends for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think about watching summer mission reunions later on, because we have winter conference in January, and not everybody from each summer mission ends up going to winter conference, especially if people graduate and they're out and about in the rest of the world. But just seeing people who are so excited to see each other again after not seeing each other for 5-6 months, it's really, really cool to see, where it's you didn't know each other beforehand, you lived together for a month, and then you didn't see each other since then, and it's just the connection was just so deep. It was so incredibly forged in the fires of a summer mission.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's observing from the outside, it's still cool to see, but it's even cooler to experience it from yourself.
I totally agree with observing that from the outside, because I had seen all the summer missions that Point goes to come back and just really be so connected with each other and very on fire for Jesus and for spreading the word on campus when they got back from their summer mission. But for me, I went on summer mission with 10 strangers. We were all from different parts of the country. And so we had no prior knowledge of each other, and we didn't come back together either. We all flew into Chicago, and the next day we were all back home, whether that was like New York or California or Florida, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a really neat opportunity to meet people you would never have experiences with otherwise.
Yeah. So kind of backing up a little bit, before you get on the trip, there's a couple steps to get there, right? So I was thinking like this time of year is usually a time for like applications, making sure like trying to figure out whether or not you even want to go on a summer mission. So I guess just question out to everybody, what was that process like for you, trying to like decide where to go or even if to go?
I mean, being in Stevens Point, I guess my best friend Joel was one of the student staff going to Alaska, so I really got that summer mission like shoved down my throat. And I was pretty resistant to go, and I told him at one point I'm not going, like stop asking me. But obviously we know what happened there. But yeah, I think the first like step, if you're a student that's curious about summer mission, is to talk to somebody either that's going that year or that's been in the past, and just kind of hear what their experience was like, what support raising's like, what the summer mission feel is in general.
Yeah, I think for me, because I was graduating at that point, like I graduated and then it was going to be the summer, I was like, there's no way I'm going on a summer mission. Like, I'm graduating and I have to like, get a big girl job and just all the things. And then it was during winter conference. I just prayed about it a lot, and it's like during winter conference, if you've never been, there's like a time that you pray about your summer and like surrender things. And I prayed a lot of just like what the summer is going to look like, and God revealed to me that He wanted me to go on a summer mission. So I went to the summer mission breakout, and I just absolutely loved it. And I applied for NMB the night that I got home from winter conference, and
Wow.
I went. So it's pretty crazy.
Incredible.
I'd say for me it looked a little different because I wasn't super drawn to the traditional sense of summer mission, like going on campus and sharing day in and day out. So I was already like on the hunt for something a little different. And that's when Ryan had brought in some alumni who worked for Jesus Film. I think they still do. And so I got to talk to them a bit more about like their jobs and what drew them to that ministry. And through like learning about Jesus Film, I learned about all the other summer missions that Cru does, like Unto. There's a bunch of different options that you can pick. And so for me, I picked Jesus Film because my majors were arts management and media studies. So I had a lot of experience with like the art media world. Not that you needed any to work with Jesus Film. They teach you everything. They put you through a lot of training before you go, which was super helpful. But it really just opened my eyes to how you can use the talents that God has given you for ministry in ways that you really don't expect. And there are so many different like avenues that God can take you down for ministry.
It sounds like, just like trying to coalesce some of your stories together, it sounds like one of the number one ways to end up on a summer mission is to be resistant to a summer mission. Which is definitely part of my story as well. Like for 2 years, I always told like people who invited me on summer missions, like, no, not this summer. Like, no, I have a job already. It's like I'm already committed to that. And it was just so incredible how God uses that resistance to be able to be like, well, I mean, plans can change sometimes. Just like slowly like breaking down the barriers of like, okay, at least consider a summer mission. And then it was, okay, so like, you know, we have some different partnerships here in Stevens Point. You should think about one of those. And then I got asked in 2023 by Ryan, just, hey, you want to lead the Perth summer mission? It's like, okay, I think I have my answer for me now. So I was already considering it. I'd already heard so many stories from people of years past talking about like all of the things that you do on a summer mission with Cru, and just the different ways that Australia specifically has made such a huge impact on people who have gone. As soon as I was offered that, it's like, okay, I'm going to need to take some time to think about this. Like, it was not an instant yes. As much as I wanted it to be an instantaneous answer, I took a couple of weeks and I like talked with my parents about it, and just like I had to take some time to think about it. And I mean, like, one of the biggest barriers for me was definitely the cost. I don't know how you guys felt about that. But I can still remember being on the phone with my mom just talking about considering the summer mission, and she was like, okay, how much does it cost? And I'm like, $6,000. And I can just remember like having to like pull my phone away from my ear as she's like, $6,000? What are you thinking? And I'm just like, hold on, Mom, there's like a process that we get to go through to be able to like help us raise the money, and like we don't need to just like pay all out of pocket. And it's like, I know my mom knows some of these things from being involved in a church for so many years, but it's just like, okay, that was a lot louder than I was expecting her reaction to be. So it's like seeing that resistance. That was before I even committed to the summer mission, and against all odds I still decided to go after hearing that. So like, I don't know, the biggest barrier in my way, other than like just initially even thinking about going on a summer mission in the first place, was definitely the cost. But like, I guess expressing that desire definitely helped me, because it meant that crew staff were able to speak into my situation of being like, okay, well, you don't need to be like as stressed about that, because like we have a lot of resources. We'll train you on that. We'll be able to make sure that you feel prepared for that. So that definitely helped ease my concerns, at least going into it.
Like, did your mom come around after, after the fun started coming in, or after the mission?
She definitely came around afterward, and like, my mom is the kind of person where if she has a big reaction, she'll, still consider it afterward. It's not like her initial reaction is what she always feels about things. So like, she had that big reaction. Then a couple of days later we were talking, and she was like, okay, I'm sorry for being so like loud and like yelling at you about this. And then we started talking through like the logistics of it. So she did end up coming around, and it was definitely nice to have my parents' support for it.
For sure.
But like, it definitely took a couple of days to like wrap around. I mean, it took a couple of days for me to wrap my own brain around the concept of like $6,000. But like, what I kept hearing from people was, when people are able to put forth the effort to support Raise, and they're able to like take advantage of the connections that they've either made in college or through like a church, like what I heard on the Perth trip was like, everybody in recent years who has been able to put forth the effort has been able to get 100% support before leaving. And that just showed me like, God is faithful. God does what God needs to do. And it's like, he just moves his own money around within the kingdom to be able to get people to the places that they need to go.
Yeah. Something that I reminded myself of during that process was that you never know what God's placed on other people's hearts. And you never know if they're like looking for someone to give to. They're looking to get more involved in missions, and God's going to be using you to reach them. And there's just like so many ways that God can work through it.
It's amazing the stories that I've heard, like from people of, I was, $1,000 short like a week before my trip, and like God provided one person who like he had put on their heart that they should give $1,000. Or like, even my circumstance, I ran into my old neighbor in the Milwaukee airport like 2 months before my mission. And I didn't think they were Christians, but I like sent them a letter anyways. And they sent me $250 and like a nice note that was like, blessings for your trip and hope all is well.
Wow.
Which is just crazy how God, like, when you take a step of faith and say, I don't know how this money's going to come in, but God, I trust you're going to do it. It's amazing to see him work through that.
Yeah, I know for me personally, when I was like thinking of all of these people, I'm like, who am I going to send this letter to? Like, I know five people that I was like, yes, I know that they're for sure going to donate. And then just thinking of all these people, and I thought of like my high school teacher, which I did not think like they would donate at all. And they ended up being my biggest donor by far.
Wow.
That's amazing.
So don't like be afraid of what God can do, because you just got to have faith, and kind of like what Grace was saying, and just like, you never know what God's going to put on their heart. So
Exactly. Like, if God called me to the point of going on a summer mission, then God's going to be calling other people to help get me there. And it's like, if God's going to be faithful to me, he's going to be faithful through other people.
Yeah. I would also encourage people to not get in the way of people blessing you and be wanting to be generous. I feel like just for like the way that I grew up and just the influences around me, I'm always like, oh, don't give me money. Like, I can do it on my own. Like, I can fix it. Like, I can do it. And so that had to be a little bit of a mindset switch for me. It was like, okay, people are like wanting to be involved in this process. Like, they want to see me go off and share the good news, and like they just want to support me in this, and I had to let them.
Yeah. So I guess shifting gears back to the actual mission itself, what way did you see God grow you the most on summer mission?
Dang. I got sick like the second day in Perth.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was weak, I wasn't able to do as much as I wanted to, and felt like crap like going up or getting up every day. And somehow like things got done, people stepped up, and so that, I don't know, that was really cool to see God, like of all time to get sick is like this 1 month, that we're in this country, but it's cool to see him work through that.
Yeah.
I'd say he encouraged me to keep saying yes. I got really nervous right before my mission because like it all kind of hit me at once. I'm going to a country I've never been to before, and I'm going with people I've never met. Like I've never seen them around before. And so I was like, I told myself, as long as Chicago goes well, because we were all meeting in Chicago and then flying out together the next day. So I was like, as long as Chicago goes well, then I can relax and be fine. And thank God Chicago went amazingly. And we all met and we realized that we are all in the same boat here. Like we all don't know where we're going. We don't know what to expect. And this is all going to be like a brand new experience for us. And so he taught me to say yes to those new experiences and say yes to just really following him in his direction for me, but to also rely on people, like the people around me. Those people, those 10 other students were my support system there. And we really learned how to just come to each other with anything and everything.
Kind of getting back at that like community aspect we were talking about before, just like being able to get to know these people. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, NMB was really heavily focused on sharing and evangelism. We went sharing 6 days a week, which is kind of crazy, to 3 to 4 hours at a time, depending on the day. But I think God taught me the most of just how to be bold and how to say yes, because there's definitely times where you're like almost at the end of sharing and you're like, God, I'm so hot and I'm so tired and I'm starving. But you just like, you have to be able to be so vulnerable and just be like, okay, that person looks like I want to like go up and talk to them. And you talk to them and then you end up talking to them for like an hour and a half past like the time you're supposed to get off the beach. And just the amount that like you just pray in between. This is like what I did. Like we'd talk to a person, and then we'd pray for them, and then we'd go approach the second person and just walk up and down the beach. And the amount that people said like, you don't know like how cool this is, because I was just like asking God to show me a sign, or just asking God to like show me that he's real, and just stuff like that. It could be like that experience, or it could be just be like, yeah, I've been wanting to get into this faith and I didn't know how to. So
yeah,
definitely very cool.
It's really cool. I definitely relate a lot to the like unknown aspect of going, like Grace was talking about, because like I mentioned, I got asked to lead the Perth Summer Mission as a student in 2023, and the people that I was leading with were people that had not been to Stevens Point yet. Like they were going to be joining our team, but before I said yes, I had never met them before. So I was not only going to a country I didn't know, I'd never been on a crew summer mission before. I've been on a summer mission, but not with crew. I've been on one with my home church. And then I was going to be leading it with people that I had never met before. So there's a whole lot of unknowns. And you'd think that that would be enough unknown for the trip. But then as I went on the trip, I was dealing with the unknown of like, I have no idea who the people are going to be on campus that I'm talking to. I don't know what our team is going to look like. A week into our trip, our people ended up getting kicked off of one of the campuses that we were sharing on because they weren't an officially recognized club. And that kind of threw us for a loop of not knowing how we were supposed to respond to that. We ended up having like a game plan for it, and the Australia team was able to help us a lot with that. But there was just so many like unknowns and so many curveballs that got thrown at us. And I mean, like, it was so interesting to me as somebody who tends to be more of like a perfectionist and a planner, to have to rely on God to like work the situation out for us. Like, it is almost fully out of my control right now. And there is absolutely nothing that I can do to control the situation. I can just control how I respond to the situation. And then like through the rest of the trip, I got to experience like what this ministry was, and being able to like full time all day, every day, I was out doing evangelism, or I was like helping with the Bible study, or I was preparing for what their weekly meeting was going to be like. And I got to experience what it was like to like do this ministry thing. And then that put me in a period of uncertainty of well, maybe I should consider this for my job. So the summer mission, not only like I was not only like faced with uncertainty on the mission itself, but then that caused me to have uncertainty for my future that I thought was like so perfectly nice and neatly planned out, just like how I planned it out, because like I said, I'm a perfectionist. And then that just kind of got like picked up and moved to a completely other area, tossed aside a little bit, and it was like, well, okay, God is doing wonderful things with this ministry, and I just don't know where I fit into it anymore. It's like I just had to seek God so much after that, and like having to depend on him in those moments of uncertainty is what really drew me closer to him. And it was just so interesting to see how like even through that mission, my life has been like fundamentally changed after that, because I didn't mention it before, but I'm interning with Crew, so this is now like what my full-time job is this year. I don't think I'd be here if I didn't go to Australia, because it just completely shifted how I had to think about my future.
I know the feeling well.
Yeah. So another question that I had for you guys: how did this trip expand your mission for the world? Because you went to a different region of the country. You also went to a different region of the country, going to Alaska. You went to Southeast Asia. I went to Australia. And it's like, how did this expand your reach of like the global church?
Ryan, who leads the team here at Stevens Point, was talking to us about this thing called holy discontent, which basically means that like you see the world around us and we see the joy that we have in Christ, and there's this disconnect there where people don't have this joy, and so we feel this discontent rather, that we want to share that with other people. And I think going on a summer mission, spending 2 weeks, spending a month, getting to know people, asking them their stories, hearing the hurt that maybe the church has caused, or people doing things in the name of Christ, hearing those things you would think would be a deterrent from sharing your faith, but really for me that has opened my heart and motivated me to be a light for them, to be just someone who's kind and respectful, even if we don't talk about spiritual things, like just to be a positive experience and represent Christ. And so yeah, that's the mission for the world, is that you get to see people who are lost and broken, and you have an opportunity to share the best news in the whole world with them. And that feeling is really unlike any other.
Mm-hmm. And did you kind of take that feeling back with you after the trip?
Oh, yeah. That was something that was really emphasized in Alaska, and we emphasized it in Australia as well, is like, this is a 2-week summer mission, but this is not the end of your mission. And so as you go back to Stevens Point, as you go back to Madison, Wisconsin, as you go back to your communities, continue to use the skills that you learn, continue to use the experiences that you had to share your faith with others. Because really the trip is awesome in that you get to share with people, but it's also really valuable in that you're equipped to do the same thing at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that. Like, being able to see the global world, but also recognizing that like your home is part of this globe.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, I feel like we think about like global missions and we always think about going out of the United States. And I mean, like I mentioned before, Hailey, you stayed in the United States, and that's really cool because the United States still needs the gospel.
Yeah.
It just so happens that I feel like a lot of people, and I know I'm very guilty of this, just always thinking of like, well, what can I do internationally? What can I do for other countries? Like, the United States has a lot of Christians in it. It's like, yeah, we have a lot of Christians, but there's still a lot of non-Christians as well. So that always kind of gets me when I hear that kind of thing, whereas like, it is true that like our home still like needs the gospel. But I was thinking when I went to Australia, one of the things that expanded my like vision for like the global mission, like you hear in like the Great Commission, like make disciples of all nations. And I don't think I've ever seen that portrayed as well as it was in Australia, because like there's kind of like a phrase, I don't remember who coined it or if this is like an official thing that anybody else says other than me and other people from my trip, but like you reach Perth, you can reach the world, because
I think Bill Bright said that if you reach Australia, you reach the world.
I think Bill Bright did say that.
The founder of Crew.
Yeah, founder of Crew, the organization with the fancy light over there. Yeah, but like there's so many international students. Like I remember just looking out, being in front of the weekly meeting at like at the university in Australia, and just looking out and seeing people from literally all over the world. Like I think there was someone from the UK, there was someone from India, and there was just someone from like, there's probably at least 10 different countries represented.
Yeah,
and like
South
Africa. Yeah, it wasn't like, it's not even a huge group of people. Like we're talking less than 100 people in this room, and there's still so many countries represented. And it just kind of like, it made me realize how different it is from doing ministry here in Stevens Point, because we can make a huge difference with this group of people. But a lot of people in America have similar backgrounds. Like maybe they grew up in the church, maybe they didn't. Maybe they've heard about Jesus, maybe they didn't. But a lot of people have a very similar-ish background. But then you go to Australia and you just have no idea where these people are coming from, because a lot of them are coming from completely other countries. And I think that that's just seeing like the diversity within God's kingdom is so cool to see, because you can know that like each of these people is made in God's image. It's not just people that look like me. It's like all of these people are made in the same image, and that's the image of God. And that kind of then further goes to show how like incomprehensible God is. If like everyone is made in God's image, it's like, well, his image encompasses so much then, and yet we're called to reach all of them.
I feel like a great opportunity that I was a part of in NMB was we get put into separate teams, because there was like a prayer and world vision team. That was the team that I was on. There was like I don't even know all the names. My mind is blanking on them, but trust me, very cool teams.
There's a lot of teams.
Yeah. But yeah, I was part of the prayer and world vision team, and we got to like email people that were a part of crew in different countries. So we got to pray for Australia, we got to pray for Thailand, we got to pray for, I don't know why my mind is blanking so much. Just some other different countries, and it was super cool. We got to like watch a video of what they're doing in those countries, and then we like asked for prayer requests, so we would take time during our large group and pray for them. So it was definitely cool to just learn about different cultures and to know that, yeah, they really do need Jesus just as much as we do.
Yeah, and even like on a stateside mission, still having that like global reach, I think is really cool, where you're spending so much time sharing with people in the United States, but also still thinking about everyone else too.
Yeah.
That's good. When you were talking about just like really embracing and getting to know those other global cultures, it reminded me of how here in America, like we are used to Christianity being like the number one religion, and we are used to people we meet being familiar with Christianity. And so for me, when I went to Thailand, it was like, oh, you don't know what a Christian is. Like you've never heard the name Jesus before. And I think that really just opened up my eyes to how we do have a lot of privilege here. And getting to travel to like Southeast Asia, where the biggest religion is Buddhism, like there's just so much spiritual warfare, but then also just like discontentment, and a lot of people not realizing where that discontentment is coming from. And you are able to like go and offer like some insight into what people are going through, and just really connect with them on a much deeper level than you ever would have expected. Like you get off the plane in Thailand and you just like, you feel the heaviness of like the lack of Christianity and the lack of just like spiritualness. And it's hard to describe just the feeling of being there and being surrounded by like shrines and temples. And it's just something we don't experience here in America. And it's something we don't place a lot of perspective in with when it comes to evangelism here. We think, oh, we're just like walking on campus and like talking about Jesus, and people are like, oh yeah, I've heard that before. But like it's not like that everywhere, and like you'll get to travel to these different places and just really realize how important it is to go and to listen when God asks you to go.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I think that is about all the time that we have for today, unfortunately. So thank you for listening to or watching this episode of the Real College Life podcast. Make sure to give us a follow or whatever it is on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.